Welcome to part 6 of our Canadian adventure, where we've left Sydney, headed for the tiny town of Sherbrooke, before taking in the sights and sounds of the wonderful city of Halifax. The journey from Sydney to Sherbrooke is almost 3 hours, so to break it up and make it more interesting, we did two things. Firstly, we went to the north of the Bredor Lake rather than the south, and secondly, we stopped at a place called Bedeck. Both Pip and I agreed that Cape Breton definitely had the best tree colours of the whole trip. Here's a few images to show you what we mean. Bedeck is a small town sitting on the north shore of the Bredor Lake. It was also the summer home of Alexander Graham Bell, and where his museum is now based. Born on the 3rd of March 1847 in Edinburgh, I think most school children would be able to tell you that Alexander Graham Bell is most noted for inventing and patenting the telephone. Bell's mother and wife were both deaf, and he dedicated a lot of his early scientific life to the development of hearing devices. This led to the creation of the telephone. But Bell's scientific interests were wide and varied, and in later life he developed groundbreaking work in optical telecommunications, hydrophores and aeronautics.
Can you tell us about Alexander Graham Bell?
That he was, I guess, most well known for being the inventor of the telephone, but actually he was into many things, including powered flight, be it kites or aeroplanes.
Who knew? Who knew he did all those things?
The biplane that you can see in front of you is called the Silver Dart, and it was flown by J.A.D. McCurdy on the 23rd of February 1909 as the first powered flight in Canada. We had a great visit to the Alexander Graham Bell Museum, but it was time to set off again. We track the north coast of the Bredor Lake, stopping for lunch as we crossed the Canso Causeway. As you can see, the causeway was pretty fierce, with water being whipped up over the road. When we stopped for lunch, we were ready for our turkey and gravy sandwich. One step closer to a heart attack, we set off and complete our journey to Sherbrooke. So here I lay in my 23rd year, how I wish I was in Sherbrooke now. It's been 6 years since we sailed away, and I just made Halifax yesterday, God damn them all. Apologies for that rendition of the last verse of Barrett's Privateers. This well-known Canadian sea shanty is relevant to our trip, however. When Pip saw the word Sherbrooke on the map, it was what she immediately thought of. And if someone says they wish they were in Sherbrooke now, we guessed it would be a nice place to stay. The song is set in 1778, and the only problem is Sherbrooke, Nova Scotia, wasn't founded until 1805. If only Pip had known that we could ignore the laments of somebody pining for a town that didn't yet exist. In the summer, there is an amazing tourist attraction called Sherbrooke Village. I'm guessing it's a bit like King's Landing, with authentic old buildings and actors playing the parts of locals. Unfortunately, when we were there, it had closed for the season, so we were left, well, with not a lot to do, really. The next morning, we began the beautiful drive down the coast road all the way to Halifax. On the way, we passed some very interesting places. The indigenous population of this area were known as the Micmac, and in their language, Ecum Secum means red house or red bank. Talking of red houses, on our way to Halifax, we stopped off in Dartmouth, which is where Pip used to live, and this was one of her very first houses.
Okay, so what's this bridge called?
This is called the Angus L. MacDonald Bridge, or it might be the John A. MacDonald, I can't remember which.
Okay, and this is in Halifax.
So we're going from Dartmouth over to Halifax.
Halifax, Nova Scotia. So if you have a look to the right,
If you
you'll
look to
see.
your right, that's where that big giant explosion took place, which was two British ships back in 1917.
Apologies, that's awful videoing, but I'll stay on the bridge for a little while just so you can see
Was it
it.
1917?
Was it 1912?
1935. It was,
No, it was earlier than that. Yeah, it was in the teens. There we go, over the bridge we go into Halifax, Nova Scotia.
Just a moment to reflect on this beautiful teenager turning into this gorgeous woman, who then became a nursery nurse, the job that took her to Canada. Sitting very near the entrance to Point Pleasant Park, this is the house where Pip had her very first nanny job when she moved to Canada in 1981. I loved spending time in Halifax with Pip because it allowed her to reminisce and share with me her memories of those early days in Canada.
I first arrived in February of 1981 and I'd never known cold like it. So to embrace it, I learnt to cross-country ski. So 44 years ago, I would have skied down this very path.
Do you remember the Martello Towers that we saw on the Plains of Abraham? Well, Point Pleasant Park has got its own, called the Prince of Wales Tower. It is actually the eldest Martello Tower in North America, and it was built in 1796 by Captain James Stratton. It sits on one of the highest points in the area, and before all of these trees had grown, it would have had a commanding view of the harbour. There are actually 3 battery positions in Point Pleasant Park. This is the highest one, the Cambridge Battery, all 3 adding additional firepower to protect the harbour. To put things into context, this map shows just how important Point Pleasant Park was in its position overlooking the harbour. The park opens up to a lovely shingle beach with the harbour in front of us and McNabb's Island in the distance. We went out to explore the centre of Halifax and climbed up past the clock tower towards the citadel. From just below the citadel, I took these shots of the centre of Halifax. You will notice that there are no buildings here older than the beginning of the 20th century. It is only as I carry on panning that the clock tower comes into view and some red brick buildings below. Everything else had been destroyed in the Great Explosion of 1917. On the morning of the 6th of December 1917, the French cargo ship SS Mont Blanc collided with the Norwegian vessel SS Imo. The Mont Blanc was travelling from New York to Bordeaux via Halifax and was carrying a very flammable fuel, benzol, as well as a full cargo of explosives TNT and picric acid. The Mont Blanc was entering the harbour and the Imo was leaving. They realised that there was going to be a collision, cut their engines, but it was too late. The Mont Blanc was completely blown apart and a powerful blast wave radiated from the explosion, initially at more than 1,000 metres per second. Temperatures reached 5,000 degrees centigrade and the bed of the harbour was even exposed as a tsunami headed for both shores. Around 1,800 people were killed and a further 9,000 were injured. The blast was the largest human-made explosion at the time, as it released the equivalent energy of 2.9 kilotons of TNT. Tremors from the blast were felt as far away as Cape Breton. It was an incredible event, and one that shapes the city of Halifax that we see today.
Charge all government property within range of this post. Allow all persons of a respectable appearance to be admitted without pass by recording their name in the visitors book, and pay compliments to all officers of the Army and the Navy according to their rank.
Sentry, parentheses, should be extended 50 paces to your proper rear. Sentry! Hands! So, out!
Now everybody see a whole lot of spinning. This is so that at least one person's always working out of the fort. Now it's going to be a mirror of how the change started. The old sentry's now going to be marched back into the tunnel. He's going to be ordered to unfix his bayonet, and then it's going to be dismissed for a 2-hour break.
Citadel Hill in Halifax was first fortified in 1749, the year that Edward Cornwallis oversaw and founded the town of Halifax. There have been a number of different fortifications here, the latter dating from 1828. The soldiers that you see here are not active duty military, but are historical interpreters and reenactors. Pip was trying to tempt me to perform the shot put, but the ball was just too heavy. Imagine that the modern buildings did not exist in front of you. You can see why the citadel was so useful in guarding the harbour. This flagpole is situated right next to the signal post office, and it would have been used to send messages to ships in the harbour or approaching Halifax. As well as enjoying what Pip described as the best chowder she'd had on the entire trip, she took me to two of the pubs that she used to visit over 40 years ago. We had a drink at the Split Crow, but we didn't stay that long. Pip said that internally it had changed significantly and there were even mice running around the floor. Didn't stop us smiling though. We spent much longer at the lower deck, which according to Pip was exactly the same as it was 40 years ago, including the live music. I'll leave you with a beautiful shot of the Halifax sunset. Next stop, Lunenburg. See you next time.